أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا أبو القاسم محمد أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to this third segment of this 8-part series exploring 8 universal moral values and living these values as Muslims. At the heart of human history lies a set of timeless principles and values, and sometimes they've been called virtues. It's these values or virtues of honesty, trust, humility, responsibility, empathy, love and affection, cooperation and faithfulness have been deeply cherished and embraced by diverse cultures, religions and civilizations. In the first 2 segments, we discussed that they are not exclusive to any one faith or tradition. Throughout history, these universal values have guided us humans, and they have been the foundation of human civilization since the dawn of time. And indeed, this is going to be our discussion today. I'm honored to be joined by our co-panelists, Dr. Ahmadullah Siddiqi and Dr. Aslam Abdullah, who are absolutely no strangers to Islamic City Forum. And joining us for the first time today is our guest panelist, Sister Shabnam Dewji. Introducing Shabnam, and it's a pleasure because I worked with her for many, many years, facilitated many, many workshops together. Shabnam is a thought leader and a strategist with experiencing managing operations for Fortune 500 companies, including Time Warner Cable and others. And in be it the community, be it our organization, she has been a mature voice in many of our community projects, especially during the time of uncertainty and change. In fact, she was awarded Woman of the Year by Time Warner Cable in 2011. A dynamic leader with a passion for mentoring and coaching, I'm sure what we hear from her on the subject of trust today is going to be very insightful and really very practical, because she's also certified in the neuropsychology of learning from the Type Academy and devotes her energy inspiring children. In fact, she has been running a Sunday school for the last two decades, and she inspires children and adults to become wholesome and exemplary citizens. So welcome, Sister Shabnam, to this panel. Today we will be discussing the critical role of trust in building strong relationships and fostering collaboration, particularly in an era where skepticism and suspicion are all too common. So let's dive into this important conversation that trust is foundation of a healthy relationship, be it personal or professional. And when trust exists between individuals, it leads to open communication, mutual respect, and a willingness to support each other. It's especially vital in a world today where people are often skeptical. We live in an age of not just facts, but alternative facts and many other issues that we face. With trust, inshallah, we may be able to overcome these barriers and collaborate more effectively. So over to you, Sister Shabnam. Let's talk about some ways to build trust, especially in our relationships. What are some key strategies to cultivate trust and strengthen our connection with others? Over to you, Sister Shabnam.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Walji. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. The question of trust and relationships is to understand that trust is not independent of integrity. You see, building trust with people means you have to earn it. It is not a formula that comes through. It is not a formula that is defined by others' behavior. It is not a formula that comes with a list of do's and don'ts. Trust is earned. And in order for us to earn trust of others, we have to live our life with integrity. It is not, it's synonymous. It's not inconclusive. It is together. They are connected. building trust in a relationship, and as you very aptly put it, it is probably the foundational thing in living our lives today and even in the past. Trust comes from people knowing you are reliable, dependable. And if you look at the dictionary, and I'll quote, it says trust is a belief that someone or something is reliable, good, honest, and effective. So something or someone is qualified to earn that quality. You know, in Islam, and we all love to quantify that and qualify that Islam is a way of life. Islam is not a do's and don'ts book. Islam, the Quran, is not filled with laws and regulations. In fact, the Quran is filled with excellence in character and integrity. And so even when we look at the life of our Holy Prophet, we do not see in the Quran verses after verses about how to pray and how to fast. Yes, there are verses, but they are not consumed in the Quran. In fact, the Quran is filled with moral values. The Quran is filled with how people in the past, how the historical figures dealt with challenges, so that it is a lesson for us to acquire. And therefore, when we talk about trust in relationships, we cannot separate the fact that the Quran is a guiding light. And the Quran talks about having trust in God. Trust in God. And the word the Quran uses is, before I do that, we love to quantify the fact that, and we should, because our Prophet earned his ability to guide and convince people of this new faith he was bringing to the era of ignorance in the city of Mecca at the time. When he was brought, it isn't okay for someone that nobody knows to come up and say, "Hello, people, I'm sent from God, and I'm your new prophet, and this is my virtue, and this is my book, and this is how it's going to be from this day forward." It didn't work that way. The prophet, as we know, was born as a prophet. However, it took him decades to announce his prophethood. Why? Because it required him to build that trust and level of confidence in the people he lived with, in the community he lived with. And so that people could then say, "You know what? I know this guy. Yeah. No. I've trusted him for so long. He's dependable. He's reliable. He's kind. He's virtuous. He's generous. And you look at all the qualities that the Prophet had already built before he told the people, "If you trust me, if you believe in me, if you know what kind of person I am, then I have one message for you. And that message is, there is no God but Allah, and I am his messenger." Literally, it took him 40 years to do that. In that 40 years, he worked to have people trust him, to the point when his wife Khadija hired him as a worker in her very profitable industry of trade. All she saw in him was the quality of integrity and trust. She didn't see any other quality in him. So our Islamic history is prefaced with this, and that it is not something you just come and announce. You have to earn it. Trust was earned by the Prophet. Now, relationships are the same way. Relationships are built based on who you are at all times, not who you are when people are watching. That is not how you earn trust. Trust is, who are you all the time? Are you a person people can call upon anytime? Are you a person who, when you are your teacher, when you're a parent, when you're a co-worker, when you're a colleague, who are you? Are you the same person with the same values? That is what builds trust and integrity. And there is no difference then whether you're at home or at work or in your masjids or anywhere else, that people, when they see you, they know, yeah, this one I can trust. I can talk to this person in confidence. Relationships do or die because of this value. Relationships are things that when we do not coordinate and communicate in this manner, are either broken forever or sewn together forever. This is a quality we cannot take lightly. And Allah uses the word in the Quran to describe trust as tawakkul. Interesting. Tawakkul, loosely translated as trust in God. Actually, the root word is wakala. Wakala is somebody who is, you are a partner with. The wakala is a wakil, someone you have trusted, you have confidence in. Something that when Allah says, you are going to have full trust in me, there is no backing down from God. He's got your back. And that is when we say, if I am powerless to control the things in my life, then all I have to do is depend on God. Now, people, of course, as people are, they'll take the shortcut. And people said to the Prophet, okay, he noticed they started to spend more time in prayer, more time in the mosque, more time doing things that are considered worship, and they stopped going to work. And that displeased him. He said, wait a minute. He called them and he said, okay, let's get one thing clear. You have to do and live in this world, and then you depend on Allah, okay? It is not something you do first and say God will provide and then just abandon your responsibilities. No. Tawakkul means doing, and then when you have used everything in your power, then you say, now the outcome, I am going to leave upon God. That's trust. That's the ultimate trust. In fact, the people asked the Prophet a question. And by the way, the questions that were asked to the Prophet are lessons for us. So this man goes to the Prophet and said, I have a camel. Should I tie my camel first and then depend on God to protect the camel? Or should I untie my camel and then say, God will take care of them? What should I do? And this is the answer that the Prophet responded with. He said, tawakkul means you should tie the camel with a rope and then say that you have trust in Allah, that He will protect your camel. You should not have confidence in the rope alone. And likewise, you should not neglect the rope, because tying with the rope is a part of tawakkul, meaning you've done your part, now God will do His part. That is true with people. You have to do your part in order for the other person to do their part. And this is where the verses time and time again in the Quran say, Allah is sufficient for the needs of whoever trusts in Him, trusting in Him in the outcome. Now, we human beings, we are exposed to all kinds of experiences in our lives. Some are positive, some are negative. Some come with calamities, problems, crises. Some come with success. Some come with flourishing. What do we do when these types of issues come into our life? How permanent can we keep worry in our life when we are anticipating a loss, whether it's in our business or in our health or in our income? Where do we go to? And this moral constitution, which the Sharia or the Islamic Sharia could alleviate the worries of people, is where we come. We say, you know what? I've done everything possible in my hand. Now, all I can do is depend on this one person where I can derive energy, positive energy. I can turn my worry into hope, because that is trusting in God. Converting a negative into a positive. And that is trusting in people. I mean, let's face it. If I've got a gallstone in my bladder, I'm not going to say, oh, God, help me. No, I am going to make that appointment. I'm going to go see that doctor, and I'm going to go get things done. And then I'm going to say the healing, I will pray to God to heal me completely. But I'm not going to stop and say God will take care of that gallstone. That isn't going to happen. Of all the challenges and of all the stories in the Quran, whether it is Prophet Nuh or Prophet Musa, the one that resonates with me is the story of Maryam. The story of Lady Maryam is unique because she spent her entire life serving God. And then God throws a challenge to her. Imagine today, if your child comes to you and says, I am with child, no marriage, what would be your response? Unbelievable. And this was her dilemma. And she tells God, wait a minute, no man has touched me. And you are telling me I am with child? What am I going to say? What will they do to me? What will they think of me? What are you doing? And God assured her. And God told her, just point at the baby. Carry the child with you. Do not say a word. And point at the child. That's all you have to do. And her trust was unfathomable. Because she stood there in front of the townspeople, in front of the same place she served in that monastery. And when the people said, oh daughter of Imran, oh sister of Harun, what have you done? Your mother wasn't unchaste. Your father wasn't unchaste. What have you done? She anticipated that. And all she did was remain silent and point to the child. And the child spoke. That was her trust in God. And where do we learn? This is unbelievable. So thank you. This is where my story, I wanted to conclude with everybody where it resonates the most. When the time is tough, that's when the tough turn to God. That's when you turn to the people you trust. Thank you so much, Dr. Walji. I hope that was good enough.
Jazakallah. Thank you so much, Sister Shabnam. That was inspiring, connecting integrity with trust. Is indeed, these two go hand in hand, and that was a brilliant exposition in terms of what we can do. And also, of course, we need to live that life, and we live that life in accordance with the life of the Blessed Prophet. So thank you again for connecting the idea of trust with the example of the beloved Prophet. And indeed, these values are universal values. And there was no better exemplar of the value of trust amongst others than the Blessed Prophet. So thank you for that. Now we move on to a question that I'd like to pose to Dr. Siddiqi in connection with the subject that we have, to take this subject to the next level and to take it in a slightly different dimension. Sister Shabnam talked about relationships and how you build relationships. Trust issues, Dr. Siddiqi, can be quite challenging to overcome, as we all know. So what are some tips that an experienced person like you can offer for rebuilding trust after it has been broken? So please, Dr. Siddiqi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Sister Shabnam, for an excellent presentation covering both the conceptual and the practical aspect of the value that we are discussing, trust. Before I come to your question, Dr. Walji, I would like to say that with regard to any value, moral value, there are always two aspects. One, how do we understand that value and practice it in relation to God? And second, how do we understand and practice it in relation to human beings, fellow human beings, whether they are close relatives, people in our family, or people in the mosque that we go, or in our neighborhood. So we always have to understand trust at these two dimensions. And if our understanding and internalization of trust with regard to our Creator is good, is according to how it has been explained in the Quran and the Sunnah, then that will empower me to practice that value in relation to other people, in relation to human beings. On the other side, or on the other hand, if our understanding and practice of the value of trust is weak or vague in relation to the Creator, no matter how much we try to build it with people, there will always be problems, and we will always face some problems with regard to that. Now, coming to your question, obviously, if trust has been breached between me and another person, and I realize and understand that I am at fault, then the first thing would be to have that courage to express it to the other person, rather than trying to hide it. And it happens to a lot of people that something that comes in our way of practicing any value as well as trust is our ego. How can I express publicly that I was wrong? So I think that's the first step to a healthy relationship based on trust, is that if I am the one who was at fault, then I have to admit and go one step further, and I have to apologize. Because without restoring the damage that has been done, if I expect that the other people will understand, a person will understand why I breached the trust, then I am just trying to establish trust in vacuum, and it's not going to work. And I think that a lot of time, people's relationship is destroyed because both sides try to not admit that what they may have done to breach the trust, to damage the trust between the two people. And it is one of the most scarce commodity, because lack of trust generate another negative trait that I call hypocrisy. That you appear to be trustworthy, whereas you don't have any intent to be trustworthy. Then the real trust cannot be restored. And it happens on an interpersonal level between two persons, and it also happened at group level, group communication level, as well as at mass communication level. Look at the leadership crisis in the world, in the political arena, in the civic engagement arena. Why people don't trust the members of the Congress, the president, or the people who are at a position of responsibility in your mosque, in your organization? Because this hypocrisy brings a curtain between you and the other person. And both sides pretend as if they trust each other, but in fact, they don't trust each other. So the first thing in order to restore trust is to come out of that hypocrisy and to honestly admit what may be your fault. And then you expect that the other person will also realize the same and relationship can be restored. Because the common advice that we get from religion is that you remove a bad thing from a good thing. You cannot remove a bad thing from another bad thing on your part. So the same thing is true in case of trust also.
Thank you, Dr. Siddiqi. Well said in terms of taking the first proactive step to try and mend the rebuilding of trust after it is broken. Thank you for those wise words. We are pretty close to the time where we need to close this. So I'll go to Dr. Aslam to do two things. One is to wrap up this discussion and also perhaps address this question as a student of history, as a, I would say, a scholar of history. I misspoke. And also as a person who has looked at organizations. How can we create stronger connections and work together more effectively as Muslim organizations in this country? And you have seen it all, Dr. Aslam. So your wise words on this would be very welcome. And please do conclude this with a dua.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. A few years ago in Southern California, when we were all talking about drought, many Muslim organizations organized a prayer for drought. I was one of the persons who also went there to offer the prayers. And I counted there were only 3 people who had come to that prayer with an umbrella. Even I didn't take the umbrella with me. And that basically brought me to that idea which Sister was presenting, that complete belief in taking hold of a support that is unfailing. And that's how the Quran, at least in 2 places, describes this concept of trust. One, when we read this, La ikraha fi ddin qad tabayyana rushdu min al-ghayy, faman yakfur bit-taghut wa yu'min billahi faqad istamsaka bil-urwati al-wusqa la infisama laha wallahu samiun alim. There shall be no coercion in matter of faith, and distinct now has become the right way from the way of error. Hence, he who has who rejects the power of evil and believes in God has indeed taken hold of his support, most unfailing. And then the other one appears in chapter Luqman, verse 22, and says, وَمَنْ يُسْلِمُ وَجْهَهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. Unfailing trust, unfailing belief in the support that would come. And let me be very honest with you, that Muslims have difficulty in accepting that concept that the Quran and God provides unfailing support. Quran very clearly reminds us, وَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكَ مِنِّي هُدًى فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. That if you believe in what you believe in, and the divine power and divine guidance, whenever you find it, you will have nothing to worry and nothing to fear. But if you really look at the conditions, the Muslims, we have been living in fear of each other. Forget about non-Muslims. we have been in our families, in our communities, have been living in a situation of total distrust. And let me bring it out very clearly. Look at the issue relationship between the Shias and the Sunnis. We have been living in fear of each other. We don't trust. We don't trust even in matters of faith, when our schools of thought that we have divided and devised for the last thousands of years, we do not allow, majority of us, do not allow the person of other school of thought to lead our prayers. I mean, it has reached to that point. We don't trust. And this trust has to be offered by the religious leadership. When you have religious leadership that constantly poke objections at other communities and other schools of thought and create distrust in an atmosphere of this fear and atmosphere of this worrisome situation, you basically get the feeling that you don't trust God. And I think this is an issue that Muslims have to look into, as Dr. Siddiqi also pointed out clearly, that what is your relationship with God in terms of trusting His willpower and His thing. That's one thing. And then the secondly, do we trust each other? And unfortunately, we don't. I mean, our institutions are not yet equipped to a theology and to a methodology of teaching where we can create a universal community of believers which is connected with the Urwatul Wusqa, unfailing support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's support and His mercy and His things. And I think this is one of the important things that we have to realize, that unless our religious institutions in that respect, our Imam Baras, our Masajid, our Islamic centers, our Islamic schools, start a curriculum based on developing trust with God and trusting each other's ability to understand religion the way we have understood, and then move forward towards the common interests and the common benefit of humanity, we will not be able to live to that challenge of the Quran, that those who surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those who are doing good indeed has that belief that they have the unfailing support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who basically the final authority in the outcome of any efforts that we do. So it is in that particular context I look at it, and I think perhaps the time has come when in this country, in the United States, we have come from different cultures and different schools of thought, can come together and create a new kind of universal Islamic understanding that what happened in the past was the result of the distrust that we had with each other in terms of our understanding of the faith. Let's move forward in developing the trust among communities, among schools of thought. Let's our institutions be open to each other, and let's our communities be, as close to each other, regardless of their differences in juristic issues and in historical understanding, unless we move in that direction and then basically focus on out of the box kind of understanding, we would keep on repeating that we trust in God, but indeed we, through our actions, prove that these are mere words And we have to do much more than simply saying what we intend to say. I'll stop here, and inshallah, we will have more opportunities to have this kind of discussion in the future also. And we're grateful to you, Dr. Walji and Dr. Ahmadullah Siddiqi and Sister Shabnam, for making it happen and then for bringing it out in such a lucid and very succinct manner. That what is it that is needed by our community in our institutions in terms of building trust of each other within our families, within our communities, and within the world at large. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you. And let us recite Surah Al-Asr and conclude it with the hope that perhaps in the new environment that we are here in this country, we will be able to develop that community that trusts each other, and a community that trusts God in the real sense of the term, not in simply repeating the message that we have the belief in the unfailing support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all those who are making efforts to develop the trust among each other. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us develop that understanding of each other so that we could rely more on God and His ability to heal our wounds and our complaints against each other. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala show us the right path. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم.